a Dear Media original podcast.
Today's episode is the second in a two-part story. It includes adult language and mentions of violence. Listener discretion is advised.
The LA County Jail is just super gangbang culture. Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? Dudes are fighting. Amongst Black people specifically, it's a lot of Black folks fight each other in the county jail. Other races don't do that. They have rules about how you're not allowed to do that, and they stick together and they only gang up to fight us. But we fight each other and them because that's just the way trauma looks after 500 years of bullshit sometimes.
"500 years of bullshit." How do you survive 500 years of systemic trauma and oppression? Richie finds himself caught in between worlds. Being a Black boy that loves Beyonce, Hello Kitty, and fat pink laces, Richie's non-traditional tastes make him vulnerable in a patriarchal system. And the toughness that he uses to survive leaves him vulnerable in larger society. Violence to his person is almost a guarantee. So, how did Richie survive this unjust system? Black feminism. I'm your executive producer, Tracy Ellis Ross, and this is I Am America, where we meet people who are redefining their own identity, the idea of community, and the possibility of our country. These stories are beautiful, heavy, and light, and they allow us to reimagine and reframe what we know about this country. Today's episode is part 2 of 2. This episode is produced by showrunner Nicole Hill, and this is Richie Reseda.
After his arrest in 2011 at the age of 19, Richie Reseda was sent to jail to await sentencing. The year before, he'd spent a week in lockup, and he'd been terrified by the brutality of the guards and by the fact that he was in a gang. And so that meant that he was always facing the threat of having to attack or be attacked. When he got out of jail that first time, he changed his entire life around hoping to avoid that place. And now he was back.
I got in 5 fights within the matter of months. Got my head split open. Mother's Day 2012, my mom came to visit me. I had just gotten a fight right before. My head was actually bleeding, and they had packed it with instant coffee to stop the bleeding, but it started anyway. The cops are behind me and can see my head is bleeding, and they're not there to help me. They're there to criminalize me because obviously that means I was fighting, which means I need to go to the hole. They come and got me, turned me around, arrested me, and my mom's like, what's going on? They're not even speaking to her. You know, she's on the other side of glass. She can't even really hear. All she sees is me turn around, blood leaking out the back of my head, and cops take me away. That was the county jail. And I spent my time writing raps, working out, designing clothes. What was always most important to me while I was locked up was my art. And what hurt the most was that I couldn't be the producer, fashion, culture, organizer person that I was in my heart.
Richie kept in touch with the friends he made back when he was attending feminist men's groups and first becoming an activist. And at this moment when he needed them the most, they came through.
My organizing community really surrounded me, raised $10,000 for me to get a private lawyer. The first day we get to court, this lawyer comes in in the old tattered suit, just foggy glasses, looking like a hot-ass mess, saying, calling out my last name. And I walk up to him and he just said, okay, this is just your arraignment. You're going to go in, say not guilty, and we're going to worry about getting these life sentences off of you. And I was like, oh, life sentences? You must have the wrong person. And he said, yeah, you're the guy. You're fighting 7 robberies, 2 kidnappings, and assault with a deadly weapon. You're facing 150 years to double life. And, I just didn't know how to feel or how to be, I just felt like I was going to die, or that I would prefer to have died,
Richie's found guilty and learns that he will spend the next 10 years, that's the entirety of his 20s, behind bars.
The district attorney went and stood with my family, and said, now, Richard, we're all rooting for you. But I need to let you know that if you commit another felony, you will spend 25 years to life in prison. And he put his hands on my parents' shoulders. So I'm very aware that, I got 10 years in prison. I'm 20 years old at this point. I have 2 strikes. How am I going to make it?
Richie's referring to the 3-strike law enacted in California in 1994 when he was 3. It requires that anyone convicted of a felony 2 times get an automatic life sentence if they're found guilty of a 3rd felony. It doesn't matter what the 3rd felony is. It doesn't matter if the offense itself calls for a shorter sentence. The idea is 3 strikes and you're out. Reformers and abolitionists have argued that this law violates our 8th Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment. Since it was enacted, it's led to thousands more people, disproportionately Black and brown people, being sentenced to life in prison. Richie goes through the first of what will be a series of prison transfers. He's very much aware that if he gets pulled into an altercation, if he gets that 3rd strike, he might not ever get out.
The moment I get to prison, we're on lockdown. There's an active conflict between the Blacks and the Northerners, which is like a prison gang. They let out a Black person and a Northerner at the same time. And the Northerners attacked this Black kid who actually got transferred to the prison with. He was 18 years old and they stabbed him. And I'm like, fuck, I'm about to die in this motherfucker. Like, these dudes got knives and I got 2 strikes. And that was the world of the first prison I was at.
At first, Richie's not too far from LA, so his friends and his family and his organizing community keep coming out to see him.
Everybody was pulling up. One of my exes, she was maintaining the schedule. I stay cool with my exes. I'm a Scorpio.
But then he's transferred to a high-security prison in rural California. Most of the men there were much older than him, were convicted of much more violent offenses, were facing longer sentences. And this facility is too far away for his people to be able to keep coming out and visiting as often as they did before. Rich is going to have to face this next chapter in isolation. Whenever I travel to a new country where I don't speak the language, I like to brush up on the basics. And that is where Babbel is so helpful. Babbel is my go-to language learning app. It's sold more than 10 million subscriptions, which is not surprising, because with Babbel, you can choose from 14 different languages. I've practiced French, Italian, German, and Spanish on the Babbel app and the podcast. A few years ago, my friend and I were in this beautiful little Italian restaurant having dinner. It was super tiny. We're the only people there. And the waiter came up to us and he wanted to talk about the meal and his travels and just his love for food, all in Italian. And we were able to talk because of the Italian lessons that I've been taking on Babbel. There are so many ways to learn with Babbel. In addition to lessons, you can access podcasts, games, videos, stories, and even live classes. Plus, it comes with a 20-day money-back guarantee. Right now, get up to 55% off your subscription when you go to babbel.com/America. That's babbel.com/America for up to 55% off your subscription. Babbel, language for life.
From Vogue, The Run-Through, a new weekly podcast featuring the most riveting news in fashion and culture, with Vogue's take on the big stories.
Fashion in relation to sports, culture, and politics. From the red carpets and runways to political and cultural events.
Bringing you undertold stories from around the globe.
With voices rarely accessible and uncommonly authentic.
On this season of The Run-Through, Serena Williams, Michaela Cole, Mathieu Blasé, and more.
The Run-Through with Vogue.
I'm Chloe Mao.
I'm Cho Minardi.
Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
They sent me even farther to this super racist corner of California, Lassen County. Susanville is the name of the prison. I mean, racist, they call me the N-word to my face there. All the cops were white. Being in Susanville, there were multiple riots and lockdowns as soon as I got there. It was a high-security prison. Spent a lot of time on lockdown. Almost the entire time I was at Susanville, I was on lockdown. I was reading bell hooks, We Real Cool, and The Will to Change. and just seeing how we could be freed and so much of the bullshit on the yard that I was so afraid of. Because again, there's only two options: fight and get struck out, or don't fight and then get attacked for not fighting and get killed, possibly. So I was very aware of patriarchy. It was a life or death thing for me every day. It wasn't just an idea. It wasn't, a philosophical debate. It wasn't about looking woke online. It was like feminism or death. So I started trying to challenge myself to live in my values more. And my community, my organizing community that was around me, my partner, my best friend, my mentors were also challenging me. I just had good people around me. I had people who I could write a letter about. I was reading The Will to Change today, and this is what I learned about myself. And they'd be like, wow, that's dope. That's important that I had feminist women and non-binary people of color around me. Not physically, but in my world, the people who I was writing. That's what really helped me to develop that politic and then challenge myself to live it out and challenge my homies around me to live it out.
His readings reminded him of what he'd learned back when he was attending feminist men's groups in high school. The performance of patriarchy, dominating others through force, pretending not to feel, limiting your ideas of what it looks like to be a man or a woman, it cost people their joy and their identity and even their lives, and it didn't have to be that way. The Black feminist Richie had studied spelled out the ways that patriarchy propped up systems of racism, classism, sexism, and also policing, and mass incarceration and the school-to-prison pipeline, systems that had negatively impacted every single one of the men around him and all of the people that they loved. Patriarchy hurt them all, and feminism wanted to end that. So the path forward seemed pretty clear to Richie. They should all be feminists. He starts slowly, nervously pitching some foundational feminist thought to the men around him.
So early feminist organizing for me looked like just talking to my homies at Susanville about like, bro, why you say the B word so much? Like, do you know how that affects society and the women in our lives? And me being so scared to say that and thinking they were going to punch me in the face, but they never did. So I kept doing it. The first time I ever did, I was fucking shaking. And by the fifth time, I was not.
In 2013, Richie's transferred again, this time to Soledad Prison, which is a medium security facility with a history of activism among the incarcerated people there. He's also part of a slightly larger population of men in their 20s, which is a little less isolating than the makeup of Susanville. He makes a close friend his age named Charles, and now that he's feeling more confident, Richie starts debating Charles and anyone else that will listen about the merits of feminism and the ties between Black feminism and the fight to end mass incarceration. Then Richie's introduced to Soledad's self-help groups.
The whole vision behind this group was if they put young people in circle with lifers who have served a lot of time, that the young incarcerated people would like learn from the lifers and stop breaking the law or getting in trouble while in prison or whatever. And I was invited by this OG who used to work out by the area where I would work out. And I was really surprised to see when I got there that the people who were leading it were these two Black women. They were up giving presentations. They were both in regular clothes. They were not in cop outfits. And they were staff at the prison. So it was like refreshing and exciting in that way because I hadn't really interacted with any women, let alone any Black women, in a few years at that point. But what they were saying was, my experience of what they were saying is that they were really reinforcing patriarchy, very much being like, y'all need to get it together so you can take a woman out on a proper date and you're supposed to be providers and protectors and fathers and that kind of way of gendering men and splitting up responsibilities amongst gender and just kind of that mainstream narrative of like, get it together so you can go out there and be a quote unquote real man. I remember it was this interesting moment because I was like, who am I to now try to insert a more feminist perspective? I'm already going to get so much pushback from the men, but if there are literally women up here saying this message is not going to get through. And of course, everybody's trying to like impress the women that are up there because, we don't interact with women often like that in men's prisons.
Richie tries to push back and insert a little feminist thought into the conversation, but just like he predicted, it doesn't get through.
I think the women who are leading it experience me as just being contrarian and just trying to like go against what they were thinking. Cause that's a narrative I imagine was easier to like for them to fathom, like this little tattoo-faced 21-year-old is in here just trying to interrupt the program. That's more what they would expect than he's trying to come here with like some feminist perspective, you know?
Richie leaves that meeting very curious about how somebody gets to speak at a self-help group. After these past few years of one-on-one debates, he's ready to share his feminist message with a larger crowd. So he approaches the men that run the group, and he pitches himself as their next guest speaker.
And I was like, you know what? I want to lead a workshop, just like they led a workshop, but I'm going to lead a workshop based on Bell Hooks' We Real Cool about Black men and masculinity.
Richie spends the next few weeks pulling together his favorite talking points and looking up stats and facts to prove that feminism allows men to choose who they want to be and fight back against patriarchy and systems of oppression instead of one another. He practices and runs his speech by Charles, and he's with it. Well, emotionally, he's with it, but physically, he can't make the meeting. Richie got the worst time slot.
It was on a Saturday, which is like when they had the least amount of people, because people would rather be on the yard or getting visits than going to groups on a Saturday. And I get to the gym and I'm super nervous, you know, I'm about to give a presentation in front of a bunch of grown men, most of them older than me, most of them been in prison longer than me, about patriarchy and feminism. When I get there, they got this dude, one of the chaplains of the prison, and he's giving a presentation talking about how he just got back from proselytizing in Djibouti. And it was just very much giving colonizer. And it's wild because almost the entire audience was incarcerated Black men, a few incarcerated brown men. And they were just eating it up as he was talking about how he was just going to the dark continent of Africa to save lives for Jesus. And I was sitting there hot. It was bad enough that he was taking up my time, but y'all gonna waste my time with this, you know, pastor colonizer bullshit. So I was angry. So eventually, after 20 minutes of this man going on and on, I go up to the dude who's leading the group and I'm like, yo, can I go up now? So he goes up there, he interrupts the pastor, completely throws me under the bus. And he's like, all right. I know we're all enjoying this, but now we got, you know, the youngster's going to come up here and give a presentation on being patriotic or some shit like that. I don't know. Go ahead, youngster. And I got up there. I'm like flustered. He said patriotic instead of patriarchy. I was just like, I was trying to get the room back. Everybody was mad that they couldn't hear these stories about African safari quests. And I went up there and did the best I could and literally got laughed out of the room. Like they were like side splitting, laughing, talking during the presentation, clowning everything I was saying. And I left and I went back to Charles and I said, we got to start our own group where we can talk about this shit for real. And he rocked with me.
So Richie and Charles get to work creating a version of the feminist men's group that he'd been part of in high school. Only this one will be designed for the men they were now and the lives they'd lived.
Our target audience was people 35 and under, young men, active gang members mostly. Because most self-help groups, all self-help groups at this time were just to help lifers get out through the parole board. Young dudes didn't go to groups. Those were the ones that we wanted to talk to. Because again, that's always who I've been interested in talking to. How do we bring the streets to the movement? You know, how do we heal our people, the people who they say are the worst of the worst and don't deserve it? Because those were always my friends before I became politicized. And that was me. You know, I didn't go to jail for stealing candy. I went to jail for pulling out guns on people, you know?
They spend 3 months developing a curriculum. And then, in the prison library on February 2nd of 2014, Richie and Charles launch their feminist men's group.
We started Success Stories, and we called it Success Stories because we knew that if we called it feminist anything, nobody would come. But men care about being successful. So our whole framework was your patriarchy is getting in the way of your success. Who you really want to be, who do you love, what do you want to accomplish? You're a person. All this bullshit was put on us. If we can get these expectations, these patriarchal expectations up off of us, we can be our true selves and have real success.
The meetings start off small, but they grow.
We had 4 facilitators so that you can sit down with like 8 to 10 people and really go in. Generally speaking, it's about helping folks get clear with what they care about at first. Then we talk about all of the things that we put in between us and what we care about. And then the final phase of the program, we put it into practice. and you write out your success story, or you write a letter as if it's 10 years in the future and you're looking back on what you did to be in the position that you are in now.
Everybody didn't just turn into feminists overnight. Even the people helping to run the program pushed back on its premise.
The feminism of success stories was always under attack by the facilitators of success stories, who themselves were men who were dealing with these issues for the first time. And they were always saying, let's take the patriarchy part out. Let's just not do the patriarchy part. Let's just do the entrepreneurship part. Let's just do this other part, because they were getting pushback from their own souls, but also, from their friends and from their participants. So that was always under attack. I was always constantly having to fight to keep success stories as a feminist program.
Participants and facilitators weren't the only people that had to be convinced that adopting a fully feminist lifestyle was possible.
I was still an active gang member when I started Success Stories. The first time we actually had the patriarchy week and we talked about the B word, I had this participant. He had said, "What about you, Rich? Like, if somebody called you the B word, would you fight them?" And I said, yeah. The idea that I wasn't going to, in my mind, I thought if I don't do that, my homies will find out, they'll attack me, I'm going to get struck out anyway. So I might as well get struck out and still have respect in prison. Over the course of doing the program, being forever challenged to be more of an example, being challenged by my partner at the time, being challenged by people around me to move in more integrity, that ended up changing later.
I want to take a minute to talk to you about HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Remember those New Year's goals you promised yourself you'd stick to? HelloFresh is here to help you eat better by delivering fresh ingredients and easy recipes right to your door, taking the hassle out of dinner time. HelloFresh now has 40 weekly recipes to choose from, so you can say goodbye to your recipe rut and long waits at the checkout line and treat yourself and your family to exciting new flavors every week. No matter your lifestyle or meal preferences, HelloFresh has recipes sure to please everyone at the table. From fit and wholesome to veggie or family friendly, you'll always find something even the pickiest eaters will enjoy. You can customize select meals by swapping proteins or sides, or even adding protein to a veggie dish. And now you can upgrade for organic chicken or organic ground beef. HelloFresh's pre-portioned ingredients and easy-to-follow recipe cards mean that you can get a delicious, home-cooked dinner on the table without all the time-consuming meal planning or prepping. You'll love how fast, easy, and affordable it is to whip up a restaurant-quality meal right in your own kitchen. I am about to get my first shipment of HelloFresh, and I cannot wait. There's a few recipes I saw on their website that I am particularly excited to try, like the Spanish one-pan chicken with chorizo and bell peppers, and vegetarian chili. I also love how HelloFresh's ingredients travel from the farm to my doorstep in less than 7 days. So I know they're really fresh. If you're interested in trying HelloFresh too, go to hellofresh.com/America65 and use code America65 for 65% off plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/America65 and use the code America65 for 65% off plus free shipping.
Hi, I'm Tracy Ellis Ross. It was a long road to understanding and loving my natural hair. I created Pattern Beauty for all of us to unleash our best curls in our own bathrooms. From wash day to styling and everything in between, Pattern promises to keep your curls, coils, and tight textures juicy and joyful. Give us a try and get 15% off now with the code podcast15 on patternbeauty.com. Here's to loving our hair.
Richie continues running Success Stories and promoting feminist ideals, while also maintaining his gang affiliations and supporting the patriarchy inherent in that culture. And then one day a fight forces him to make a choice.
Me and Charles were in class in the education building. We heard somebody yell out like a racial slur against white people. It was a black voice, and it was one of our homies. So everyone's ears go up because now it sounds like there's about to be a riot between black folks and white folks. We all jump up to see what's going on and see one of our homies who was black getting dragged down the hallway by the cops. So on the break, we go to his classroom where there's another homie in there, and we said, what happened? He said the teacher said some racist shit to him, so he called the teacher a cracker, and now they took the homie to the hole, so now we're going to jump this teacher. The dude who told me this, he was 21, he had 2 strikes. I was 21, I had 2 strikes. I said, bro, if we jump this teacher, we're never going to get out of prison. And he was like, so? He was like, that's the point. Like, you a gang member, right? Like, this is what we do. And I was like, no, bro, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not about to throw my life away for no reason. Even though I wasn't getting out for a long time, I was getting out. And I wasn't about to just throw that away for literally no reason. He went and told all my homies. Oh, well, the homie said he wasn't going to go up with us when we was going to jump that teacher, blah, blah, blah. And they all started like politicking on me for it, which is just a masculine way of saying gossiping. And I was like, oh, y'all are mad at me that I wasn't willing to throw my life away for some bullshit? Actually, I'm not doing this anymore. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, but I walked up to them, they're all in a group, and I just said, yo, I'm done. They're like, what do you mean? I said, I don't gangbang no more. One of them laughed. One of them said, what the fuck? I've never seen somebody do that before. They didn't know what to do, but the default is they're gonna fuck me up. They're gonna jump me. I had decided that, you know, if these dudes jump me for not being in a gang and I get struck out for that, I can at least feel myself laying on this bunk for the rest of my life than if I were to jump this teacher and just throw away my life for something I don't believe in. So then this yard recall, we all go in, they all walk up to me together, and I just got my jaw hella tight because I know they're going to attack me. They're like, hey, bro, come take a walk with us. I'm like, all right. I walk with them. And the main kind of de facto leader turns to me and he sticks out his hand and he says, I respect you as a man. I shook his hand and we just rapped for the rest of the night. I had a mentor in prison who'd always say, who do you want to go to the dirt for? I'd rather go to the dirt for myself, for my community, for what I believe in than for patriarchal expectations. And, you know, in a lot of ways, that's what made me able to be who I was in that prison, because the fact that nothing happened to me and that now I had a prison reputation for being a feminist, people would come to the program and be like, oh shit, well, if Richie can do it, maybe I can do it. And maybe their vision for themselves isn't the same as my vision for myself, but it showed that your vision for yourself is worth fighting for, maybe even dying for, and you might just get away with it. People stopped calling me my gang name. I told them to call me Richie. I got to be this person who I invented, Richie Reseda. And I had pictures of Hello Kitty in my cell. And Beyonce and you know, screen clips from Lemonade in my cell. Like, I was able to fully be me.
For the next 3.5 years, Richie and Charles run success stories. Richie stays out of the gang, avoids fights, and keeps designing clothes and making music and being a vocal Black feminist. In 2018, after serving 7 years on his 10-year sentence, Richie qualifies for early release. And so he turns his attention to succession planning.
I started training up the next people to run it. You know, that's the way I was taught as an organizer is leaders train leaders. You don't put yourself in a position to lead something forever. So we train someone up to run the program, and we train someone up to really hold the feminism of the program. And I got out in 2018 and started it as a nonprofit out here.
Success Stories, the nonprofit, continues serving incarcerated men, but now they're also able to reach men in schools and community-based organizations. They envision a world free of prisons and free of patriarchy as the dominant culture. And they're building a world where harmful behavior is seen as a symptom of patriarchy to be transformed within communities and through programs like theirs. Richie's the board chair. In addition to that, he is still a fashionista. He's also a music producer and an abolitionist, an educator, a feminist, a 30-year-old, and he's free to be the creative, curious human being he'd been all along.
Are you filming me put in my password?
And we at the studio.
What's the deal?
Hey. I have a little nephew right now. He's 5 years old. And his parents let him be fully him. And it's so beautiful to see what a child can be when they're not policed. I started getting policed when I was so young. And when I was taught that I was the enemy, eventually I believed it. Not only did I believe it, but I looked up to the people who were just as aggressive back to society as they were to us. And that was also avoidable. I had to find for myself a community and the confidence to be who I really am every day. And I am more fulfilled and therefore more safe to everybody. And when I did not have the space to be who I really was, I was not fulfilled, and I was not healthy, and I was not well, and I was not safe to be around. And today I get to be fully me. Face tats with the pink fat laces, making abolitionist art, clothes and music and all the things that I always wanted to do. And I really am a delight, you know? People like me. I fucking break up fights in my community and shit. And we can all be that. We can all be that. We can create a society where everybody is allowed to be that. And that is a happier, healthier, safer society for everybody.
Wow. Richie, like so many Black boys, was not allowed to be a kid. He was a statistic, labeled early and tracked towards criminalization. Despite channeling posh spice, dreaming of making music and designing brightly colored clothes, Richie had to survive before he was ever given a chance to thrive. He was forced to educate himself when the system of education failed him. And then Richie adopted the teachings of Black feminism. What's extraordinary is that in choosing a belief system and existence that is radically opposite from the rules of patriarchy, Richie risked his life and rediscovered himself. He trusted his instincts over everything that the system told him. He followed his own compass, and it led him out. This story allows us to challenge patriarchy's narrative of the Black boy. Children, and that includes Black boys, are the promise of our society. Their curiosity and imagination is what keeps us growing. Richie found a place of self-acceptance and joyful celebration. He created a space for men to explore their own identities. That's the power of agency. And every single one of us deserves to experience that from the moment we're born. I'm Tracee Ellis Ross, and I hope you enjoyed meeting Richie Reseda as much as I did.
I Am America is a co-production of Dear Media and Joy Mill Entertainment. Executive producer, creator, and co-writer is Tracee Ellis Ross. Executive producer, showrunner, and writer is me, Nicole Hill. Managing producer is Asil Kabit on behalf of Dear Media. Sound design and engineering by Mitra Kaboli. Our theme song, Strum, is composed by Jesse Montgomery. Story editing is by Martina Abrams-Ilunga. Reporting and fact-checking by Siona Petros. Production assistance by Daniel Gonzalez. Executive producers are Adriana Ambrose on behalf of Joy Mill Entertainment, Brian Dobbins on behalf of Artists First, Jeff Berman and Brett Boutier on behalf of Magnet Companies, and Jocelyn Falk, Paige Port, and Michael Bostic on behalf of Dear Media.